My name is Irene Kurka and I welcome you to my podcast Neue, musik, leben. This is a German podcast about contemporary music and mindset. But once in a while I do some episodes in English. I have studied classical singing, but I love singing contemporary music a lot. If you want to meet me or experience me in one of my concerts, please go to my website www.irenekurka.de. I will put this in the show notes for you. And also on this website, you can apply for my newsletter. In this podcast, I talk about themes and topics all around new music. I share with you behind the stage knowledge, insider knowledge, and I want you to bring closer the human beings out of the new music world. I'm very thankful for all your feedbacks and comments, and also very thankful that you tell your friends and colleagues about my podcast. Today I have an interview for you with the composer and artist Yuval Avital, who is born in Jerusalem and lives in Milano. He visited me in Düsseldorf and I think we had a very interesting talk about his music and also about his life and how he switched from being a very, very good international guitar player to become a composer. Enjoy the interview. Today I'm sitting here in Düsseldorf with Yuval Avital, who just happens to be here in Germany because he's doing or preparing a project in Gelsenkirchen. He usually lives in Milan, and I say hi and welcome, Yuval.
Hello, Irene. Hello.
I want to start with a question. How did you find your way into new music?
Difficult question. Difficult question because the term new music is shifting in my mind continuously. And new music for me can be so many things today. It can be a choir of megaphones that can be almost on the limit of punk or noise art. It can be psychedelic music. It could be free improvisation. It could be unexpected meetings between sound paradigma. It can be sound action. It can be multi-layered of creation. So I guess that what brought me to new music was maybe the eagerness not to stop and the wish to find truthfulness in my creation and meaningfulness in my path. So I started as most guitar players because I come from guitar, even though that now I work sometimes just with loudspeakers or with crowds of non-musicians or with orchestras, or it's very lot of varieties of means to do things. But I started with the guitar as a heavy metal musician. Long hair I had, long hair I have now. In the middle I had short hair. And then from this, I'm born and raised in Jerusalem. I went into jazz and very quickly to contemporary jazz, free jazz, avant-garde jazz, experimental jazz, which has a great scene. A great scene of musicians. There is Giancarlo Jones, the contrabass player, and Steve Orenstein, musicians that grew up in different parts of the world that came to Jerusalem and brought this idea of doubt, maybe about shape, about form, about noise, about sound in a city which is so conservative and so unexpected at the same time, no? And from this, at a certain point, I felt lost, and I fell into very classical guitar playing, classical music. I started very late with classical music. And then some years, a decade of spitting blood to become a soloist of classical music and working with contemporary composers and creating a trio together with Yuval Avital, the mandolin player, and Izar Karshon, the harpsichord player of contemporary music. So dialogue with many living composers that wrote for us and speaking with them, and then also as a soloist, discussing with composers about how to write, what to write for me. And from this to a creative project with dance, with other cultures. Maybe a milestone was Slow Horizons in Kazakhstan with the nomad from Kazakhstan.
So then you jumped right into it after you were playing classical guitar, and you just jumped into doing your own project or composing an own project?
For me, I think that classical music was never an integral part of me, in sense of, I have a friend that we grew up together, and we did similar path, and for him, when he reached jazz, he was very happy with jazz, and he's a great jazz player, having success and happy with the jazz. For me, when I reached the jazz, when I reached classical, when I reached Bach, I said, why? Why do I play this music? What does it mean to me? And of course, I think that with music, you can always find a layer of meaning, even if it's something very remote for you. But for me, I needed to have something which is really connected, that I find and I take from my own identity. So I think that at a certain point I understood that the creative part is something that need to be fed. And with classical music, as a guitarist, I needed this discipline of 8 hours a day playing like a hermit, and this was, less than this was for me a pain. I wanted this purity, and less than this was painful. So when I needed to choose between the paths, I thought, okay, now I did it, and I can move onward. And I think that maybe a difference between me and many friends that I love and cherish is that I always find myself in a place where I say, okay, now it's time to go onwards, move forward, see what's next, and start moving away from your comfort zone to something in which you are extremely vulnerable, you are extremely exposed, you are weak, you are starting, you are a child, and from this going onwards.
What represents for you good, new, or contemporary or experimental music?
This is, it's very difficult to answer this. I think that at the end, for me, is something that it's intuitive. I either like or dislike, and like buying furniture, You see a sofa, you said, oh, this is wonderful sofa, I must have this sofa. You can say, yes, the Corbusier, the design method, it's the leather, it's the color, but, you just love it. Like there are pieces by Mauro Lanza. Mauro Lanza, I heard his piece in shape of chipotle onion, a piece with the shape of onion. I heard it, I loved it. It's very simple. So I don't belong to any school, and I'm not excluding any field. There are pieces of Ivan Fedele that I love, there are pieces of Arvo Pärt that I love, there are pieces of Philip Glass that I love, there are pieces of death metal that I like. And my playlist is very, very strange and extreme also. So I like new complexity sometimes, I like spectralism, I like rave music. I'm very, in this sense, I'm not just as an artist. I think I'm out of the shelves, but also as a consumer of sound. I have a Taiwanese grandmother singing, shouting, for a project I'm preparing with Lucas Emleb there, and I have Joe Leguabe, my dear friend and great Zulu master, whistling like a bird, and then I have Eurythmics. Love Eurythmics. So this is also this thing about. So I think that the what I dislike. Maybe it's easier to say what I dislike. About the contemporary music scene, and what I don't appreciate is the recycling, is over academic approach. It's the fact that you divide into schools, and you're the student of this professor, so you have this path, and to be an important artist, you need to do the station of the following temples of knowledge and blah blah blah. This is for me. This is I'm more outsider, and very happy for being there as an outsider.
What are the qualities you most appreciate in performers you work with?
Truthfulness, meaningfulness, modesty, passion. I think that in Italian, you say as performer, you don't say performer, you say esecutore, executor. It's like someone that execute your score. And I think that a performer, when he or she really take your work inside and place it next to their heart and try to give something real from them, it's a privilege, and it's magic. When you have someone just reading and say, okay, I got it, and it's nothing else, for me, I feel it like a violation of myself, it's like a mechanical performance of music is horrible. It's like, sorry to say, but it's like prostitution a little bit, It's just the thing, put the notes, and it's in the place, and it's the right dynamics, this. So what you want? I put everything, but you didn't put yourself. And this is a big discussion in which many friends that I love and admire as conductors and artists said, no. You put the notes, and this is enough. And if you put the right note, the rhetoric, of course, the dynamics, that whatever, sul ponticello, sul tasto, whatever. But I think that really, when you reach a place where you are totally inside, it's magic. And then I cry. When there is a performance that I see that the piece is getting life, there is a part, emotional guy, in the crowd, I listen to it as a spectator, I cry, I start crying.
I'm with you. I've read in your biography that you do a lot of very, call it, large-scale works with lots of participants, 100 persons or 34 accordions, I read. So what is it exactly what you do, and what is your biggest piece, and where, and what's your approach in that, all these large pieces?
These pieces that I call massive sonic works, I think it's a reflection of an aesthetics that I absorb really in Israel, and not in academy that was my home for many years, and not the Jerusalem Center of Experimental Music. That was another home, or Pargod, which is the mythical, non-existent place of endless jam sessions that took even 8 hours, where everybody went nuts, and it was beautiful. But Jerusalem is an entire score, where you have this humming in certain points in the market of Machne Yehuda and in the old city, where synagogues and bells and pilgrimage create these veils of sound. As you might know, and many other listeners might know, that in Judaism you have so many parallel traditions. You have Yemenite Jews that sound completely different than Ashkenazi Jews that sound different than Maghreb Jews. You have this wailing wall, which is a point where everybody reaches. And when you have the great mournings, the mourning of the destruction of the temple, for example, you see these floods of thousands and thousands of people arriving and start to praying, chanting, each one different scale, each one different mode, some in organum, some in major scale, some in something which is completely atonalic, and the feeling you have is of unity. The overall feeling is unity. This is in contemporary music, it used to be defined as heterophony, no, or as complexity in sound, and I like the example of the concept of forest for these kind of works. Meaning, if you take a forest and you write a lexicon of what is inside the forest, you will have tens, maybe hundreds of plants, of different kinds of stones, different kinds of soil, different kinds of animals. You will have a lot of things, but when you enter to forest, you feel forest. You feel this oneness. And for me, these works are immersive by nature. They break in many ways also the stage, the concept of stage and listener. So in Mizenabim, for 34 accordions, 5 soloists, a crowd of non-musicians, and we'll speak maybe about this, crowd music and vocal crowd, and 4 conductors because it's all circular. Here you have something that you cannot record. For Mizenabim 2011, RAI, which are the National Broadcast Network of Italy, they took it as a project, as a challenge to record this thing. So they used a new kind of microphone that had, I think, 16 capsules that could create virtual 64 microphones to get the sound. And the result was always very, very poor, because the microphone was in the center. And what you really needed to get this, you needed to move. So, because the result was stereo. You didn't need a stereo, you needed 100 loudspeakers. So this is when Frank Zappa says that the difference between concert and a recording is like visiting Hawaii or receiving a postcard from Hawaii, no? This beautiful genius Zappa. And here it's even much, much more, because you don't have a stage, you have complexity. In Garon, 45 tubas, which was really a huge challenge, because in La Scala there is 1 tuba player. To bring 45 tuba players, 6 percussions and a crowd, in an installation of Anish Kapoor, which was very big, and people were moving all around, and this I have a recording of it, but it's just an impression, a static impression of sound. And I think the biggest work is Reka, which was commissioned by Warsaw Autumn Festival and created huge scandal in Warsaw Autumn Festival, huge debate about the fact that I brought traditional vocal artists or traditional singers as performers in Warsaw Autumn, and said, why we are not World Music Festival or Contemporary Music Festival, even though that each one, the Lama from Tibet had a score, and this is unheard of in the history of Bon Buddhism. So because the contemporary meaning Western European contemporary, the shelves, the famous shelves, even though it was a sold out and super successful concert. So in Reka there are 6 singers of extended vocal techniques from 6 very different cultures, and the last version, one of the soloists is not a traditional singer, is just an extended vocal artist from Iceland, Gula, and from Mongolia, from Samarkand, and from the Zulu tradition, and from Tenores di Biti of Sardinia, guttural voices. 2 classical percussion players playing for each cymbal. I wrote 3 notes. It's extremely detailed. And then you have a vocal crowd of infinite amount of people. Usually it's about 120. And in the version that we did in Reggio Emilia's Opera House, where I put the crowds in the balconies, 4 orders of balconies with crowd, I had 25 percussion players. So this is really, you have room, sound is all around you, and sound become materia. And this is something that you have to be there. So the preciousness of living it, and not just, you can also put it in the CD and drive the car, but it's not the same.
And if you write for vocalists from all those different traditions, I mean, I assume that not all of them read like written music. How do you notate it for them?
This is a great question. So I will say something about my credo regarding non-European traditions and cultures. There is a big world around us, full of beautiful forms of art. And I think that the privilege of living in our time, there are many disadvantages, and there is dystopia, and it's not an easy period for mankind, but the privilege is that we can connect to so many forms of aesthetics, of beauty, of language, and also co-create together. So my first iconsonic opera was for 12 traditional singers in Israel and Palestine, and from 9 different cultures, meaning systems. None of them is a music reading system, and an ensemble of classical musicians. So here the challenge was how to create something which is coherent, because for different cultures even the concept of absolute pitch is irrelevant, even though that it's very complex. For example, the Samaritans, with whom I did an opera in 2010, they have an antiphonic chant that lasts for 17 hours straight, called Yom Mikrata, in which they sing in 2 groups and 1 till 3 soloists, the entire Samaritan Bible, and it's all atonal, most of it atonal music, antiphonic, multi-layered, and if someone, a soloist, make a mistake, they boo him. 17 hours, all memorized, and if he just do a wrong glissando, they boo him. So, meaning, I think that okay, I close a parenthesis and I answer the question. There is, in performing arts, there is one common denominator, which is the king of all, which is time and timeline. Timeline is something that is shared to all events. Sound events, light events, visual events, when you're making something that we can call a show. If you codify each one's actions, sound actions, in a way which is coherent and clear for the performer, because it needs to serve the performer, not you and not your ego for sure, you can create a nested meta score composed out of different score systems. So in Reka, there are 6 different scores that was created for each soloist, result of interviews and research that I did with each one, in which I codified the tradition or the, let's say, the artistic prisma of elements. Then I translated it to indications which was meaningful and coherent for the performer himself. So, for example, in case of the Mongolian singer, there's a technique that's called kumi, the kumi singing, which is the overtone singing. So you write kumi, but maybe if there is a part which is a shouting, you use a symbol which is a part of his culture, the symbol of the wolf, which is very strong in Mongolia, which is meaningless in Sardinia, for example. So in Sardinia, you need to call things in a different way and give different element of meaningfulness. For example, the thing of the Holy Week of Easter, which for them is a very important moment of lamento, which is completely different than the shamanic Buddhism of the Bon culture that has elements which are connected, for example, for exorcism. And so also, performer, at the end you can say, yes, I don't want to do it, I want to do it, but at the end, composer, and we spoke about it before, are even a bit of sometimes sadistic to the performer, to show how wonderful I am, I will write you something that will drive you mad in a new manner that you never experienced before. And here it's a Lama Rinpoche, which means High Lama. Don't come for career, don't come for money, don't come for exposure. But this is also true to a great singer of the Bukharian culture, because if the singer feels even 1 milligram of the action somehow affects her dignity of her culture, of her as a person, she won't move even for $1 million. So I think that the first is the concept of respect, and then the concept of meaningfulness, and then starting with the performer in front of you. And now I'm going to say something that is recent in my mind, but recently I really think that also classical performers need meaningfulness, and need to pass a process which is connect them to something which is higher, which is deeper. So in my latest opera job that was performed by 2 excellent classical contemporary ensemble, the ensemble of contemporary music of the Parco della Musica of Rome, with Tonino Battista, and the Auditive Vocal with the conductor Olaf Katzer. And for the ensemble that basically chanted and sang the entire ancient Hebrew text of the Book of Job, I created a score full with visual elements that little by little brought him to depends of the 5 singer, into a quest of meaningfulness, and I think in the rehearsals things happen, sometimes tears, sometimes hugs, things that you see maybe in theater, but you don't see so much in contemporary music. And I feel that this element of truthfulness and meaningfulness is something that is extremely rare.
But then you also make the score very individual for all those different kind of singers, because you have the feeling how to pick them up in like a, as you said, respectful way, or what they need or how they feel, but also in a musical sense, how to notate it that they can perform what you want to do. So it's very individual, I assume.
Well, it depends. In solo pieces of mine, I think that almost all of them was a fruit of a dialogue with a soloist. So even if there is something that of bringing the soloist toward my world, there is almost every time an intimate process of dialogue. And when it comes to an ensemble, it depends, with ensemble Meitar that perform Fuga Perpetua, it's one of the most wonderful ensembles, I think, today of contemporary music. Their dedication is crazy. And this piece was born out of a commission and a co-dreaming with the artistic director, Amit Dolberg. And just to give you an example, so I write the piece, and there is the premiere in the Pavarotti Opera House in Modena, and then later Brighton, and I send the score after doing the video, after doing the mobile sound theater, after doing all the stuff, and we can speak after about the iconsonic creations. And Amit gives me a call and said, Yuval, I'm working 2 weeks, which for Amit, which is a virtuoso and a phenomenal sight reading person, it's forever I work. But there is this part and this part and this part, which are, you wrote metronome 120, I think it should be 80. I think, meaning, please lower, we are dying here. And Fuga Perpetua is a work about refugees. It's an opera with refugees that speak about journey, about mother, about life. But there are parts which are called Corsa Perpetua, which is running constantly. And I said, here, Amit, it's like refugees running for their life. And he listened and said, okay, so we keep it. And basically there are 3 or 4 places in the score that had only one pause, which they are killing themselves. They knowingly going to a score, to a part, where they are going to fail, which is, for a classical musician, is the nightmare, almost like going to the stage with no underwear or something. So they're going there willingly, and they are fighting for their life with music, and this is, for me, this is a sign of love, with Tonino Battista in the Parco della Musica ensemble, the people, there were huggings, there were, people spoke about meanings, people spoke about message. These are, for me, beautiful, Of course, it's not, I can't, blah, blah, blah. No, the Emiola, you did it wrong. I really don't care. And if a performer said to me, Yuval, look, this is difficult, I say, okay, let's change it, no problem. I'm not a fetishist of notes, but I'm really into meaning.
We already talked about it. You have brought up this term, icon, sonic opera, and artwork. This is what you call many of your works. What is this about, and why did you come up with this term?
Opera, now in Gelsenkirchen, in Theater im Revier, there will be the Fuga Perpetua, and we spoke, he said, how it is an opera? Is it an opera, or what is the game about this opera? And for me, opera, first of all, is very important. Because opera is a moment where Baroque composers and artists, Monteverdi namely, said, okay, we want something which is not just abstract, but something that is connected to the emotional world as much as to the intellectual world. And they looked towards the Greek tragedy to create something which is immersive, that has text, that have sound, that have beautiful visual elements. And there's something that much later on Wagner defined as total opera, immersiveness. Opera today means singed theater with large orchestra and choir, because if I don't do it, I don't get the money from the government that paid me per orchestra and choir and sang theater. For me, an icon sonic opera, first of all, I don't say icon musical. And this is liberating me. I address sound. And sound can be, for me, concrete music, concrete sounds that I record and I collect, which is connected. It can be noise. It can be score. It can be melodies, which is big taboo in contemporary music, but I love melodies and I don't care. And it can be so many things, you know. So this is sonic, and the iconography is something very important. You know, it's like allegorical paintings. You have icon. You need to get it. You know, an icon. It's like a sign, but with meanings, layered meanings. So icon is basically it works where you have, to make it more simple, you have a score and you have a video, parallel, sometimes one projection, sometimes multi-projection. And from 2010, I do all the process of the visual. 2010, I shared it with an editor, but from 2011, almost all the visual part is created by me, sometimes also filmed by me, just to use expert for extreme post-production and special elements, special effects. So these works are born in which I think sound and image at the same time. And it's not that the music is a soundtrack to what you see, not that the video is a visual track to what you hear. It's born from the same person. And in the recent years, I think I'm becoming as known artist as composer. I do exhibitions, I do installation. My calendar now, I think this year will have more artistic works than musical works. And many things that can be, you don't know where to put it, in music or in art. You know, I just finished a project in Mako, in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Rome. The project, the meta project of the curator Giorgio De Finis is called Mako Asilo. It's like a haven for creativity. And there, a first part of a 1-year project started with 1 week with 11 performances of an overall of over 300 participants, namely non-musician working with the voice. So this is in a Museum of Contemporary Art. Open small parenthesis. Is it possible that contemporary music scene became so rigid and so academic and so based on connection between curator, professor and student performing, or I invite you, you invite me, that radical new elements in sound will find themselves in freedom in art museums and not in music biennales, the closing parenthesis. So icon sonic also can involve other art forms. In Noise for Sid, which is an opera dedicated to Syd Barrett, the founder of Pink Floyd, it's a psychedelic opera, which is a total opera, had also dancers, where I worked as choreographer and light show and stage design. So yes, for me, Iconsonic, I love Iconsonic.
Yeah, you already told us you're doing many different things, and now I wonder how you track your day. Do you have some kind of time management rituals, and do you have any advice for us how to get things done?
When I was in classical guitar playing, I lived like a hermit. I had the clock set to a certain hour. I would go. I would 3 times a week. I would walk or run. I would have the coffee. Would have my coffee breaks, cigarette breaks at the time. I would measure everything. I would measure the time I can spend for social life, for romantic life. Everything was measured in this thing of the discipline. Now I am the antithesis of it. Some insight that I can share that which is good for me and not necessarily for everybody. Some that I can share that are proven science. So I start with something which is proven science. Human brain is incapable of multitasking. This is latest brain research. There is no multitasking with human brain. There is multitasking with a quad-core computer. You have split attention. This is multitasking. Meaning, if you work on a piece, work on this piece and do nothing else. This is very difficult, so divide your day to 2 and work in the morning on one piece, second piece. But if you start mixing pieces and pieces and pieces, you might be able to perform those, but everything will be sacrificed. And since good enough is a present situation in many musical performances that occur today, and I say, okay, yeah, it was okay, but if you want recording, we should really work on it 2 weeks. So it's very common that people say something like this. Good for a show. So when I write something, if I write the score, I don't do anything else. I cannot play, I cannot paint, I cannot edit, I cannot speak. I become like a zombie in pyjama and I write the damn score. I don't do anything else. This is one. So when I work on a video, I work on the video. I don't work on nothing else. When I work on sound sculpture, when I work on... So this is... Second thing, which is very important, listen to the useless. Meaning, sometimes in the efficiency, you shut down the desires of your mind, of your fantasy to do things. And you are just concentrated. Michael Klinghoffer, which is a great musician in Jerusalem and bass player and teacher, and he said to me once, he said, Yuval, the problem with musicians that are always concentrated on the urgent matters and they forget the important matters. And this is so beautiful. So before we spoke about meditation, stop time, waste time. Because this wasting time, you don't know where it leads you. You get stuck in front of a TV series, an endless Netflix series. You say, no, I shouldn't see this series. But maybe inside the series, you are reading something, you are getting something that is interesting for you. Allow yourself to be undisciplined. If you want to be a super robotic, successful, whatever superhero, good for you. Don't listen to these advices. It's very bad. Be disciplined like a ninja. But I think that as an artist, it's very important to have these moments in which we just go away from our place, from our comfort zone, from our obligation. Third thing which I can say which is strange, and it's an endless task, I guess, is love yourself with all your flaws. And I think that great friend and a great artist, Andrea Molino, is a composer and conductor, but he's also, a philosopher artist. We can blah 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 speak all the time about many things. And he did a work. Title is Winners, and when he worked with Fabrica and Benetton, and the thing is, it's all about this horrible concept of winners and losers, which evaded everything. You have talent show, winners and losers. You have competitions, winners and losers. You have in the academy, who sings the longest result, or play the least si minor bomba, fast like lightning, whatever. And this winners and losers. At a certain point, you see life, you see tragedy, you see death, you see illness, you see imperfection of body, you see wrinkles, you see ugly me, and people get frightened and they tend to cover it in different forms. And we as artists and musicians, I think that our musicians are all about giving, because you give yourself on the stage, you give yourself on the score, and we need to receive. The first person of which we need to receive is our own self. But being so critic about details, many of us, me included, me for first, we created inside of us punishers rather than hugging supporters. So I think that this is very important. Find a way to love yourself, not in a narcissistic manner, but in a truthful way. Yes.
What are you thankful for today?
First of all, my wife and my child. My wife Ellie, that supported all this craziness. And when I stopped playing classical music and I didn't have an established composer career, far from it, she supported it. She said, okay, when I turned off very clear opportunities to be more stable, but maybe less creative, she supported me. My daughter Alma, she's 3 years old and she's my biggest teacher. With voice, she's incredible. She's really like a triple Meredith Monk, crazy. What they do with the voice, unbelievable. And so this is family, and love is wonderful, and I'm grateful for. The second element for which I'm very grateful is the possibility that I have today to say 2019 is closed, 2020 almost closed, and inside of it, all I do is really things I want to do, and people say, invent me and do. So this, I don't do anything because I need to do this for whatever reason. Each one is a crazy creative project with huge challenges, and I just come back before Gelsenkirchen from Dresden, where I will be opening the Australe Art Biennale of Dresden, which is one of the biggest art event of Germany. And there is the Andrea Hilger, which is an amazing curator and artistic director. And this is a big project, 1,500 square meters, 3 installations. There will be numerous performers. And she gave me so much love and courage, not just her, all the team, Claudia, her assistant, Nicole from Tristan Productions. It's all the team, and they just give you love and give you power. Do unexpected things, and this is for me fantastic. So it's the what I am grateful that I managed somehow to do it without dying first, because it was against all the odds. And I think that many musicians are shocked in what I managed somehow to do, especially without their permission.
What does it mean for you to be true to yourself or authentic in the music business, and how do you keep true to yourself?
I want to quote another friend, Scott Cohen, who is a genius, and he was one of the first people to brought music into the internet. He's more into rock and music, but he's really a visionary person. And he said something, there was a music meeting in Milan, and I was spokesman, he was spokesman, we had the coffee, and he said, music business didn't understand yet what it's all about. For many years, people thought that music business meaning selling records, you know? What is music business? I say records, I sell CDs, I sell tickets. But then, you know, records, CDs disappear, concerts are changing shape constantly, concert hall sometimes works, sometimes you find yourself in an anti-concert hall to hear and see things. But what is certain that brain scientists look into a brain of a person when he or she listens to music and sound in general, and the brain starts shifting completely. So music industry maybe is not about selling CDs or filling halls, but it's about changing mind of people business. And when you think about this point of view, I think that many things change. Is it answering the question? I don't remember what was the question.
It's okay.
It's okay?
You already answered a lot of interesting things for me. What does success mean for you?
Success for me means freedom. It means freedom. Freedom and a sense of meaning. Freedom and meaning, you are okay. And I think that I have still some path to reach it, but I think that in the overall I'm doing good.
And what drives you forward? Do you have a vision?
Not something that I can finish it with ism, you know. There is no, but there is a constant thirst, you know. Last few months I'm drawing all the time, acrylic and gouache and coal, and my studio at Transform. There is one side which is a huge table only for drawing, and the other is for multimedia and music. And for me, this thing about reinventing yourself, which is very important, and I think that this is put yourself to become again a child, to be in I don't know, to be in totally lost, to be in uncertainty, to be in doubt. This is so important, and this is so deep, and it's so special. And it's not about showing everybody how original you are or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Original is dead, you know. We are 8 billion and we are billions forever. Like, everybody did everything, you know. It's not about that, but it's about something really between you and yourself. And to say, okay, I'm in zero again. I'm in nothingness again. And there in the zero, I feel a little bit the whole, a little bit of fear, the dark, and then, you know, something happens. And at the end, maybe something which is also important, it's connected also to this conversation, is the human meeting. And I'm deeply interested in the human meeting, which is not something which is in a frame, but it's really soul to soul. The possibility to really create a contact, a touch, point of touch between two people.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, I could probably talk with you forever. I mean, there's so many interesting topics, but we arrived at the last question.
Okay.
And I want to ask you, which tip would you give, or would you like to give young artists?
There are some tips that are common cliches, but I'm going to say them anyway. Being in the middle of my life, first of all, don't be an artist unless you really have to be an artist, because really, it's not an easy life. Not easy life, not in the romantic sense, but really places where you go and it's can be horrible moment in your life. It could be a moment of humiliation, moment of an economical uncertainty. It's tough. It's really tough. And so unless you feel that if you don't be an artist, you are not an artist, you will finish extremely depressed or worse, don't be an artist, please. Second element is inside music, there are many works you can do. So it's okay also, finding a safe zone where you are enjoy and you have a balance between studying and teaching and performing and finding your equilibrium. And this is not a bad thing to try to achieve this happiness and stability, completeness. But if these elements is not enough for you, and you feel lost, and you feel that what people give you in academies or whatever is not enough, it's okay. Because art, great art, made by people that were extremely different than the system. There is a recording of a premiere by Edgar Varese where all the cultural milieu is booing him, shouting in the middle of the premiere like pigs while he's doing it. And people today that hug and kiss John Cage used to spit on him when John Cage was alive and young and a researcher and eccentric. And maybe the forefathers used to burn witches. So if you are feeling that you are different, that you are not understood, that what you have in front of you is not satisfying enough, but you feel that you have to do it, my advice is keep digging. Something will come up. And if you can enjoy it while doing it, so great.
Well, thank you again so much for your wisdom, inspiration, and knowledge. And thank you for coming by to me to Düsseldorf, Germany. And I wish you good luck for all your upcoming projects.
Thank you, Rani.
I hope that this interview inspired you. I'm looking forward to your ideas and suggestions through email or Facebook. Thank you that you're here with me. I hope that you liked it and it inspired you. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Live your music, live your life, and see you next time. Yours, Irene.